Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 519 to 520 for the 27th to 28th of July. Oh my god, so many days. So let's start off with the Southern Front. At the Southern Front, the Ukrainians continue their attack along the Zaporizhzhia Front. Sorry, did I say Southern Front? I meant to say Zaporizhzhia Front because there's nothing over at the Southern Front. There's nothing here. Over the Zaporizhzhia Front, this is Zaporizhzhia, the Ukrainian forces continue their attack at the Orikhiv sector down towards Robotyne. So the fighting continues in this direction, and we have geolocations of Ukrainian forces by Krit 759 at this position, at this entrenchment around here, where a lot of these Ukrainian forces that's rushing down this area to attack, to storm these defenses, got totally destroyed, and they got wiped out, unfortunately. And however, this also does shows that the Ukrainians actually have full control over at least this trench line that is previously part of the very first line of defense, and this allows us to change the mapping to show as such. At least this area here, at the very least, is some kind of gray zone. Whether the Ukrainians actually can hold positions around this area here, like a permanent defensive position, is kind of unclear, because it's very close to the front line, and you do get bombarded a lot if you're at that kind of position. The Russians actually acknowledge says that there was no fighting probably on the 26th of July, on the 27th of July SITREP, and on the 27th of July the Vostok group of forces actually reported that the Ukrainians launched an attack again over at Robotyne, and this attack continues all the way to 28th. And on the 28th, Ryba, I believe this is Ryba, yes, Ryba, the pro-Russian source reported that a mass group of Ukrainian armored fists to try to break through the Russian defenses, and it seems like it did not work out as well. So far, this information was then reported by the Russian Defense Ministry, where they reported this similar attack. According to this attack, they say that up to 5 tanks was destroyed, 3 Leopard, 2 AMX-10, and then another 17 of infantry fighting vehicles and 2 armored combat vehicles. So that gives you some kind of a scale of the attack by the Ukrainians. I'm not saying that these reports of the destructions are accurate, because we do not know, but it does show the scale, because if these are the one that got destroyed, and then definitely there are others that probably survive, maybe most of them survive, then you can kind of have a sense of the scale of this attack over at Robotyne. So this attack is pretty big again. So otherwise, we actually do not have any other fighting reported elsewhere around this region, like the Bakhmut region or the Kupyansk sector. It went really quiet. And over at the Wyatt sector, we have some probing attacks being reported at Stepanyivka. And this is kind of weird because the front line is actually at Mariupol. So why the Russian Defense Ministry reported some sabotage group close to Stepanivka? So we're not sure where the Ukrainians attack from. Maybe it's from here, maybe from the north they attack south, or they try to probe in this direction from Siversk region. So this put into question about this front line here. Maybe this front line wasn't here, maybe it's more like here, and then the Ukrainians actually probe. That could also be a possibility, because this area here, because there is way too little things happening, the front line here becomes very fuzzy. So moving on to the Velika Novoselka sector. At the Velika Novoselka sector, we have the report of the Ukrainian capture of Staromaiorske. I have actually did a quick update and analysis about this situation over here. However, so let's start off with, never mind, on the 27th of July, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that Staromaiorske was under attack, which probably referring to the 26th of July. And then on the 27th, the Ukrainian forces reportedly have captured. This information is actually being announced across many of the sources. This is the official statement by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. We also have Surya Maps, the neutral source, reporting about the Ukrainians entering Staromaiorske, forcing the Russians to withdraw southward. We also have a Deep State UA reporting that the 35th Marine Brigade with the RA Battalion of the UDA has reported their liberation or capturing of the settlement of Staromaiorske. And Ryba actually also acknowledged this information, saying that the Ukrainians have a combined assault, and this allows the Ukrainians to occupy adjacent heights and enter the northern and northwestern outskirts of the settlement. Ryba then reported that the Russian forces is conducting a counterattack from the southeastern part of the town. So if you look at it, Ryba is kind of like semi-agreeing that Staromaiorske is captured or not captured. Really depends on how you read it. When I first read it, I felt that, you know, it's a capture. Anyway, the Ryba then added a separate posting saying that the Russian forces basically have withdraw away from Staromaiorske. There's basically nothing in the village because the entire settlement has been flattened, so there's no place to defend. Actually, it's very hard to defend. So then the Ukrainians actually took the propaganda videos or videos of evidence to show that they have captured. After that, they retreated back to their north and northwestern outskirts of the village. And this is according to the pro-Russian source. So after that, the village is largely still within the gray zone, and most likely we are talking about the Ukrainians actually having positions around these forest lines. This is where they actually hold their defensive positions, most likely, with the Ukrainians actually withdrawing back to this prepared position, because they were already fighting around this area for quite some time. So which is why these areas probably are more entrenched and more prepared than staying within the village where it's basically all flattened. Much more difficult to hold a position. So then we have fighting being reported on the 28th, which refers to the 27th of July, which means the Russian Defense Ministry did not acknowledge the fall of Staromaiorske to the Ukrainians, and these reports continue to the 20th, with a separate report on the 28th saying that there are recon forces within the Staromaiorske region. And then on the 29th, which is today's report, they reported that they actually repelled 2 enemy attacks near Staromaiorske. So as a result, it's kind of unclear whether Staromaiorske is actually fully conquered by the Ukrainians. My gut feeling is that it's not. The main reason is because it's not possible to hold this position because it's way too close to the front line. The Ukrainians will have to do this attack to the west to push the Russian out from this area here. And once this is achieved, once the Ukrainians can have this area here, then they can actually do a major push through the village south, as well as capturing Uruzhaine. This is actually very important. To capturing and clearing of Uruzhaine is very important. Then they can actually effectively capture Staromaiorske. Without the clearing of the Russian forces from this area here, it's really hard. And especially the front line is a bit too close to the village. It's not possible to hold the village, which is why, while I still gave the capture to the Ukrainians, which is why in the mapping you can see that there is no Russian map overlapping into Staromaiorske, but I have to note that this is just like Pyatikaki, which is on the Kayamske sector, where the Ukrainians actually do not have troops within the village, because it's just not possible to have troops in the village. But the town is pretty much conquered by the Ukrainians. They just that they are not there. It's still pretty much within the gray zone. And within Uruzhaine, the Ukrainians clearly know this strategic issue, and they continue to do major attacks at Uruzhaine. And 27, 28, 29 is today's report. The Russians reporting probably about yesterday that the Ukrainians are still attacking Uruzhaine, and this includes Staromaiorske. So the situation here remains the same, even as per what happens before the Ukrainians announced the capture of Staromaiorske. We will probably need a few days for the dust to settle, for the fog of war to lift, to see whether the Ukrainians actually managed to go from Staromaiorske as a position of strength to push out, as a stepping stone to push out, to capture or to attack southward, maybe towards this place called Zaporizhzhia. So, or capturing of Uruzhaine. If they can capture Uruzhaine, then Staromaiorske is pretty much more secure. Without Uruzhaine, it's really hard. And yeah, so we will see, or maybe there was a report, they will be saying that they will start to report fighting near Volodine, or no, then we know that Staromaiorske is pretty much secured by the Ukrainians. So we will still need more information to see. And this is actually also reflected in the reports by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 27th. Despite they announced that they captured Staromaiorske, they mentioned that the Russians launched an attempt to capture lost position at Makarivka and Rivnopil, which shows that the Russians actually still have a position on the western part of Staromaiorske where they can actually launch an attack at Makarivka. And this is actually no good. If the Russians can do this, then Staromaiorske is not very secure. If you get what I mean. So that's all from the Velika Novosilka sector. And moving on into the Donetsk Front. At the Donetsk Front, we have fighting reported at Novodonetsk on the 27th. That is a small attack being reported by the pro-Russian source. But nothing else was being said much about this attack against Novodonetsk. And moving away, we have another attempt to attack Mikhailsk. Again, artillery have basically dispersed them, so it did not come to some offensive clash with the Russians at Mikhailsk. And there is continued, as per tradition, fighting at Marinka on the 27th and on the 28th, except that on the 28th, the Russians did not say the Ukrainians were attacking. And then we have in latest report from the Russian Defense Ministry in today's SITREP saying that there was some Ukrainian attack at Krasnohorivka. So that's all we get. And moving into the Avdiivka Front in the north of Donetsk city. So for those that are lost, if your geography is not so well about Ukraine, this is where it is. And the Ukrainians continue their Avdiivka offensive, attacking Vodian, Pervomaiske, and somewhere around Avdiivka. Fighting is being reported at Pervomaiske on the 28th and on the 29th, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. 28, 29 for the Russians, I just want to highlight for those that are unfamiliar, the Russian Defense Ministry's SITREP, or daily report, comes at 12 noon. And because it comes at 12 noon, it can include information from the morning, which is why I have to date it as per the day the report comes out. For the Ukrainians, because their report comes out on 6 a.m. Local time, which is why I can actually dig back the actions to be the day before. So that's the difference, which is why the Russian reports always tend to be a bit late. Sometimes I do not report on the same day of the report for today. I will not be reporting because by 12 noon local time, I have already started recording. So so there is fighting reported at Pervomaiske and also at Vodian on the 28th. So far, that's all we know. We do not have much information about it. The Ukrainians actually say that the Russians attacked on the 27th. However, the Russians also say that the Ukrainians were attacking. On the 28th, the Russians continue to insist that the Ukrainians are attacking. However, they say that this is close to Avdiivka. There is no indication of which direction around Avdiivka was the fighting happening. And that's all from the Avdiivka Front. We have nothing at the New York Front. This is here. Moving into the Bakhmut Front. This is Bakhmut City, the famous Bakhmut City now, the world famous. And the fighting continues around Klishchiivka. We have fighting being reported on the 27th, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. And interestingly, there is no more reports of fighting at Klishchiivka on the 28th report or today's report. I have no idea why. The Russians did not mention about Klishchiivka at all. Neither do the Ukrainians. So the Ukrainians only mentioned about the Russians attacking. The Russians were on the counter attack in the west and the south of Klishchiivka. So this is the other information, and that's it. There is no more reports of fighting over on the 28th, which is kind of weird. According to the mapping by Surya Maps on the 27th, they shows that the Russians actually managed to recapture the entire of Klishchiivka. So and that's it. We do not have any other information on the 28th or on the 29th. Very, very weird. Like, it's just I would thought that the Ukrainians will continue their offensive. So the Ukrainians were attacking probably, and then the Russians counterattack in the north, in the west and the south, and then they managed to recapture the rest of the village. They secure this part where the this outskirt, the western and the southern outskirt of the settlement, and basically fighting suddenly stopped. We do not have any reports of fighting. I believe there is definitely positional fighting, which means that they are staying in position. They're just firing at each other using artillery, rifles and machine guns, mortar. But somehow there's no offensive actions, and that is very, very unusual. So there was fighting reported towards Zaporizhzhia on the 28th of July, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, and which means that is a 27th action, and basically that's also it. We do not have any other information. There is interesting report. So actually this is New York Front, so I actually was wrong. In the north of Kirovo, which actually when I tried to search, is actually Pishnivshne. The Russians say that they actually repelled an attack north of Kirovo, which is kind of a, as you can see, there's no Russians over here. So I'm not sure how this information is supposed to be interpreted. Maybe they copied the Ukrainians by randomly calling the wrong place, saying that they are fighting around here, which can't possibly be, because the Ukrainians actually are still putting pressure on the Russians on the Mayos region. So this Mayos. So yeah, I kind of unsure what is that report all about. And so that's all from the Bakhmut Front. We don't even have any fighting in the northern flank, which is like, it does make me wonder if this it? Is that all you got, Staraman? Wrong. I mean Zelensky or Zalushny, Osirski. Is this the end of the Bakhmut offensive by the Ukrainians? I have no idea, because the attacks on the flanks, is ending. Basically, it has ended. There is no more reports of the fighting at the Bakhmut Front. So, moving on into the Siversk Front. At the Siversk Front, the Russian Defense Ministry reported fighting at Bilohorivka. This is likely the one at the Donetsk region, because there's no bracket or comma Luhansk, so which is why it's likely to be this one, this Bilohorivka. And the fighting is being reported here on the 28th and on the 29th Russian Defense Ministry report. We have no other information or sources talking about this, so we have no idea what the hell is happening. And which is why we need open source information. In fact, I'm not even sure they are actually open source. They are just source, because like for example Ryba and Deep State UA, they are not open source. The concept of open source means the information is actually out in the open, but they are reporting information from their sources within the military or the front line of civilians, which makes the information exclusive, which what makes them a source for DPA, which is why they are not actually OSINT, if you get what I mean. Like DPA is OSINT, they are not. So so that's a very important thing to differentiate. And so for these sources, they don't even have any information about the fighting here, so we have no idea what the hell is happening. However, we do have fighting reported at Bilohorivka on the 28th, as you can see, Luhansk. So but this is by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. They say that the Russians are attacking, which means this is the wrong color, and so the Russians are attacking Bilohorivka, but on the 28th. And that's all from the Siversk Front. We do not have any much information. The Ukrainians did try to push for Zolotarivka last week or the week before. I thought that was interesting move, but it didn't go anywhere as well. So moving into the Kreminna Front. At the Kreminna Front, fighting continues within the forest, within the Staromaiorske forestry. And with the Ukrainians reporting that the Russians are attacking on the 28th, and on the 29th, the Russians say that the Ukrainians are attacking, which is also probably referring to the 28th. So this is actually the moment they clash, they just point finger at each other. Like some primary school or junior school students or kindergarten students. They are like, the teacher asks, who did it? Him, her, him, her, him, her, him, you. So yeah. And Yeah, they just point fingers at each other. You know, it doesn't solve anything. So no, which then makes the map have no change. And there is fighting reported south of Dibrova. Syria maps reported that the Russian forces managed to capture these grounds, like you know here, which we have already long mapped as under Russian control. So I have no idea what is this. So yeah, maybe the Ukrainians have some counter attack previously, and then they managed to capture, and then the Russians attack back, and then they managed to capture. I'm not sure. No, all this information never happened. Then never appear. Then suddenly there was this report about Russians making progress within the area that they supposedly have already captured. So the Ukrainians are attacking, however, at Dibrova, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, on the 27th of July and then on the 28th of July. And this 28th of July seems to be a more bigger offensive. This assault detachment by the 67 Mechanized Brigade. So yeah, but this attack, I think, didn't make any breakthroughs because the Russian Defense Ministry reported about it. So, and moving on, in the north, we have the Russians pushing west of Zitslivka. So Zitslivka is actually here, and the Russians are actually pushing west of it. This is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. Very interesting that they actually talked about this. And they say that the storm detachments of the 252nd and 752nd Motorized Rifle Infantry of the 20th Army managed to advance 3 kilometers into the Ukrainian defense. And this is then reported by Syria maps. And yeah, let's measure a bit of distance. I have no idea how far is this 3 kilometers. Yeah, so I do not know. So previously, what we do know is that the Russians have already managed to secure the line around this area here. So to have 3 kilometers deep into Ukrainian territory may suggest that they have taken a lot of this valley region, but no, I'm not sure. Syria maps actually mapped it as this, just like this. You know, like something. No, like something, but no, I'm not sure what. I wonder why they cannot just attack this way, or this way, but just like this. So it's very unusual. I have no idea. So anyway, it sounds very small for something for the Russian Defense Ministry to really want to report about. Maybe the offensive is actually much bigger, perhaps. So moving on to the Svatove Front. At the Svatove Front, the Russian forces did not make much push in this region here anymore. They are still fighting reported at Novoyehorivka, according to Ryba. So this town here, which the allegedly captured by the Russians, is definitely still not very secure, as the fighting is still ongoing within the area, the region around here. And there is also fighting reported the Siversk, near Siversk, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. They reported that they managed to move up to 3 kilometers deep into the enemy defense somehow, and along the 12-kilometer front. And then on the 28th of July, they reported that they continue to capture more strongholds and advance another 1.5 kilometers. So whatever that's supposed to mean, I have no idea, because the Russian Defense Ministry's mapping is on a PowerPoint, and that map is not for human consumption. Yeah, so there is still fighting reported in Nadia. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, they said that the Russians are conducting offensive operation in Nadia on the 27th of July. And again, we have no reports on the 28th or today so far. So we have no idea what is the situation. It looks like this capture might be a bit premature. There's still probably Ukrainian forces defending or counter-attacking at Nadia. So we have no idea how this goes. So a very, very big piece of gray zone now here, with overlapping claims. And however, in today's Russian Defense Ministry report, they say that the Russian forces defended against Ukrainian attack at Raihorodka. So Raihorodka is actually over here, so which means that the Ukrainians actually launched a counterattack into the rear positions against Raihorodka, because the Russians are actually the Russians attacking away in the west of this position. So maybe the Ukrainians can actually cut to the rear and force a Russian withdrawal back. So this could be possible. Anyway, this is the situation over at Svatove, southern part of the Svatove Front. In the northern part of Svatove Front, the Russian Defense Ministry every day reports that they are conducting offensive operation west of Kupyansk. So they reported on the 27th, on the 28th, and then on the 29th, which is today's report. Then they say that they took some more favorable positions, like the left side of the sofa, and also in the middle of the armchair. So you have the armrest for your arms, so it's more favorable. Otherwise, we don't really know what's happening, because this report is unusual, because the west of Kupyansk is Novosibirsk, but they don't say Novosibirsk. I'm not sure why they do not say it. So we have no idea what is the situation here. No other sources are also talking about this. Are they actually pushing much further to the south of Berestove? We have no idea. We have no freaking idea. These reports from the Russian Defense Ministry don't make a lot of sense. And moving into the Kupyansk Front, at the Kupyansk Front, we have the Russians restart their Kupyansk offensive around Liman-Pershi region. They have pushed from the west of Liman-Pershi and towards Sinkivka. Rumors says that the Russian forces have entered Sinkivka, but there is no confirmation just yet, as per what said by Ryba, the pro-Russian source. They say that there are some other sources saying that the Russians did enter the village. And the fighting continues. It's being reported by SITREP Maps and Ryba, saying that the Russians managed to expand their zone of control west of Liman-Pershi. So the mapping by Ryba and SITREP Maps shows this mapping like this, that the Russians actually managed to push and straighten the line around Sinkivka. This is not the first time we have reported that the Russians actually straightened the line. So take it with a massive pinch of salt, or MSG. And if you are Japanese, maybe you prefer soya sauce. So that's it from the Kupyansk Front. There's nothing over the Kharkiv Front, nothing at the border region. And so conclusion. There's some reports of Ukrainians launching S-200s at Russian town of Tangarod. So the Ukrainians actually dropped some one or two S-200s. There's two more being reportedly intercepted by the Russian Defense Ministry. In their report, they say that they intercepted two S-200s. So that's a surprise. It came out of nowhere. So I don't expect this to be a common thing for the Ukrainians to use S-200s as surface-to-surface missile. And the Russians are also doing missile strikes on Ukrainians, so nothing much to talk about. So far, it looks like the Ukrainian offensive is looking very bad. It's going really bad. The Bakhmut Avdiivka offensive is kind of pointless. There's nothing much to talk about. Kreminna is always been a stalemate. And then we talk about Bakhmut, where the Ukrainians have a lot of advancement, especially around Klishchiivka. This seems to have ended. And this is a surprise to me. I thought that the Ukrainians will, regardless how much losses, they're going to take this town or this village. And it seems that the fighting have stopped. So I'm not sure what's happening. Similarly, for the northern part of Bakhmut, is not that far away. Capturing of Yakhine Bakhivka, and then you head into the junction, block the road, capture this junction. Oh my god, the Russians will be crippled in the north of Bakhmut. But this did not happen as well. They can't even capture Bakhivka. So yeah, this is very bad. And then we also have the fighting at Velika Novosibirsk. Staromaiorske suddenly went a bit quiet. The information, and the Ukrainians still struggling with Robotyne. I have my doubts on the real control of Staromaiorske, something like Pyatikaki situation. For those that do not know where is Pyatikaki, is over here. So similar situation over at Pyatikaki. After the Ukrainians captured this town, they are not able to push out. And they can't even stay within the settlement. They are not here. They are actually at Lokove. This is the place where they can actually gather troops, not Pyatikaki. Pyatikaki is the front line. and they are pushed towards Zaporizhzhia, all have failed. So because there is a major entrenchment north of Zaporizhzhia, and the Russians also have very strong defenses around this area here. So the Ukrainians, every time they go along this road, they got destroyed. So that's the situation. So I don't, if I'm pro-Ukrainian, I would suggest, if you are pro-Ukrainian, I would suggest don't celebrate too much about Staromaiorske. I believe there might be bad news in the coming days about that town. So don't celebrate too early, because it doesn't look convincing to me, to put it that way. And then the main battle over at Robotyne, where the main trust is, as I mentioned before, trusting the robot is very painful, and it's indeed very painful. There is a viral video of one single Russian tank totally take out an entire armored assault detachment of the Ukrainian forces. And I'm not exactly sure, I haven't seen the video being geolocated just yet. I'm not exactly sure where this battle actually occurred. I suspect it's in the northern side of Robotyne. That's my suspicion. I didn't go and geolocate it just yet, but it's just my suspicion. And it looks really bad. But of course, like I said, all videos you see or all photos you see online is because someone wants you to see it. So it's not good to use it as a conclusive thing, but I just want to also highlight that it is quite costly for the Ukrainians to capture Robotyne. And like as I mentioned, this is the first line of defense. I do not agree with Surya Maps or some of these people on Twitter. They say that no, the first line of defense is actually this one. They said this is the first line of defense, this is the second line of defense. I say bullshit, man, because if you look, when we talk about the first line of defense at Velika Novosilka, it's here. So if you follow the line, where you get, this is the first line of defense. You get it? This is the first line of defense. Then we have this, so along here, this is also the first line. We have a second line which is a bit short, broken over here. We have some second, this is a second, 1.5, and this is a second line of defense, which goes below, becoming a third line. And then we have another line over around here. This is like the second line, and then we have a third line. You can see. So if you try to count it, it's kind of stupid. But the first line is very clear. The first line is a consistent line of breaking of multiple fortifications and trench line that is putting up together, which is why this is the first line. This is the freaking first line. It doesn't matter what you say, I will not be convinced that this is not the first line. This is the freaking first line. Except that the second and third line could be even more extensive, more heavily entrenched, more fortified, more dangerous for the Ukrainians. That doesn't mean that this is not the first line of defense. This is, if I draw it out, okay, so if I draw it out, you can see that this is one entrenchment, this is a trench line, there's another trench line around here, another trench line, another fortification, another fortification. This is the one that the Ukrainians tried to storm. There's another one just east of Robotyne. This one has been captured by the Ukrainians. This has been captured. There's another very small forward trench, and then there's another one over here. Massive lines around here to discourage the Ukrainians to attack through this direction. This is deliberate. The Ukrainians, seeing this line, they will avoid it. This is deliberate because this is probably weak for the Russians. And then the Russians have another line, another entrenchment here along the road, another one at Rivne. This is pretty much a consistent line. This is the first line of defense. I do not know how else I can explain this is the first line of defense, which is why the Ukrainians are struggling so hard. So, and you can see that the Ukrainians always avoid all these heavy entrenchment. So until this point, this is the one that the Ukrainians actually tried to storm. And as you can see, storming this is so costly. And and if you look at the situation at Kreminna as well, it's the same thing. At Kreminna, the Ukrainians actually avoided all these You see all these fortress icons. These are all heavy entrenchments. The Ukrainians have not taken any of that yet. They did attack this one at Zerebianki from the north, and they got wiped out. And some of these trenches are even booby trapped, or even have artillery already trained on it. So the moment the Ukrainians went in, explosions happened. So some of these trenches can even be, you know, some of these fortifications can also be a trap. And there is also some anecdotal some testimony, probably real, from the Ukrainian soldiers saying that all the trenches or all these fortifications are even booby trapped. All the entrance into all these trench lines or fortifications have mines and some sort of things that is going to kill the Ukrainians. So they say that the Russians throw some flashbangs or some tiny explosions to scare the Ukrainians into running into the trenches, because that's where they think they would be safe. But the moment they went into the trenches, explosion happens. And so these are some of the tactics that the Russians use to kill off all these Ukrainian soldiers, because the Russians are defending. Defenders usually have advantage. The attacker have initiative, which means the attackers can choose when, where, and how to fight. But so far the Ukrainians have went on the tank rush, and they didn't work out so far. Yeah, and this is the conclusion. Let me know what you think about conclusions. So far this is a new thing. Only the previous SITREP that I talked about I started to do proper conclusions, the real conclusions. So let me know what you think. Should I continue to have these conclusions, because this drags out the video, if you probably have noticed. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.